Hey everyone, it's Matt C. So I just tried to record, and some guy was beeping at me weird, and then he blocks me and starts waving at me. This is in my neighborhood, by the way, so I'm just driving like 5 miles an hour. And he's like waving his hand furiously, and then I realize my coffee is on top of my car. That's how things go some days, right? And I was already like saying like, oh, yeah, I was making it funny, like, who's this guy? What's his problem? Pie in my face. So anyway, thanks for checking out this Driven Stories. So for those of you who don't know, I drive while I record this. So thus the driving pun in the name. And it's a way, I can get my thoughts out. I kind of work best in the morning, and I can also, put a title card on it, denoise it somewhat, hopefully, and get you something that's kind of nice, relatively timeless, and maybe a bit of my comic book updates, so my personal comic book as it's getting created, printed, and shipped to you. So today I just wanted to talk about how to make characters interesting. And it's something I've touched on in various ways in other, like kind of before Driven Stories was a thing, and in other kind of videos I've made. Just like how to build, it mainly like this focuses on how to build a character web. So what's a character web? That's it's something that you do after you've already figured out the premise of your story, which is kind of like how can you describe your story in a way that gives you a vague sense of the hero, the place you start at in the story, and the place you're going to be ending at, kind of like morally, situationally, that sort of thing. That's kind of what a premise is. It's more distilled, it's more pure than even an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is going to embellish that and expand on that, maybe in 2 sentences or possibly 3. But, your premise is really one complete sentence. You got to be good about that. I made a video about that, which you can check out. But the character web, man, so I just picked, school's back in session, and I just picked the route that I like to take when school is not in session. And I get to work faster, and I'm already thinking, I'm just so used to taking that route, that's going to be okay. But everyone dropping off their kids takes that route, and every school bus takes that route. So this video might be slightly longer as I get to work than usual. Hopefully I learned my lesson today. So what's a character web? So a character web is basically what we're talking about is because you have your premise nailed down and you understand the sort of moral vision that you're going towards, and don't be scared of, I don't know, what is it? It's 2019. Like, I don't think people are scared of morals anymore. But like in 2014 or 15, I feel like people were saying things like, don't put morality in your stories. Like, we don't want to hear that. I don't really like that word. It sounds too religious or something. That's not, I guess I'm probably preaching to the choir nowadays, but I think people are okay with like, let's talk about what's right and wrong, and what sort of world would we like to live in, and what sort of world would we not like to live in. That's what stories do. That's what memorable stories do. That's how they impact you and make a lasting, impression on you throughout your life is directly through their moral vision. So, a story without that you probably didn't like to begin with, and it certainly didn't leave an impression. So towards that end, you need a character web. Man, I set up a character web like 2 different times, then I backtracked. So a character web After you've laid down that foundation, then it's time to figure out what characters with specific weaknesses and needs that affect and relate to your kind of moral vision for the particular story. How can they oppose one another? How can they help define one another? How can they and they should all oppose one another in different ways, even if they're all allies, even if they're all protagonists. They all need to reflect contrasting and competing worldviews on the theme, variations on the same theme, if that kind of makes sense. Conflicting variations on the theme, not just, this isn't like a harmonizing sort of thing. That's something you do at the end, but until then it needs to be discordant. That's how stories developed. Stories aren't just a series of events, and they're not even just a series of events leading to a conclusion. It's a series of conflicts leading to a resolution. I just came up with that on the spot. Are you impressed? So well, I'm impressed with myself, I guess. So when it comes to my story, I have from what I've read, there's a guy I like named John Truby. He writes good. He's kind of a script doctor. Wow, I don't see any school buses on the road right now. Am I actually going to get to work on time? That would be great. And John Truby suggests at least like a good solid number of kind of hero plus allies in your story is 4. So you can build like a square web with an X going through it, if that kind of makes sense. So all the characters are connected one to another, and I think that's how that works. Yeah, that's how that works. And so as you start with the web, which helps you to really consistently continue to think of your characters as part of a structure. That structure being built on the moral vision that you have, what sort of world do I want to live in, what sort of world do I not want to live in, and how do I want to convey those sort of things, and we're not talking about, utopias and stuff like that. We're talking, think about Star Wars. We want to live in a world where the Death Star gets blown up, right? We don't want to live in a world where Darth Vader is not defeated at the end of A New Hope. That's clear. And the people who love freedom and it looks a lot more diverse, and it looks a lot, I don't know. I don't want to use, you get my point. It's a happy ending for a reason. And people like happy endings. And I think I found the traffic. Oh, interesting. Weird that it happened here. Maybe everyone's switching to the longer route and making that even longer and saving me the short route. We'll see. So, I have 4 characters in my story, 4 protagonists that I'm kind of focusing on, and it helps me to keep them all interesting, to fixate on this web as I develop them from scene to scene, and kind of build the architecture for where they're going as characters. And for some reason I thought, because part of the moral vision, the premise and what I'm trying to do with Kyrie is develop a kind of there's a political, it's called Lord in Greek. So it's I'm talking about, there's politics on some level. There's different visions on how, competing visions on who should be master, who should be the opposite of a master. That's kind of what we're doing with Kyrie. So I thought it'd be okay to take that, the 4 square, it's like orange, blue, green, pink or something. It's like it's like the political spectrum kind of thing. It was like a meme from like 2 years ago. Everyone kind of took it and they put a little dot and they said, that's what you are. And it felt kind of arbitrary, but then you learn to I think it was kind of interesting. That's kind of what I'm doing with my 4 characters. I've kind of talked a bit about this in the past, and so like top, it's a grid, with the X and a Y axis, and the Y up and down axis is authoritarianism to libertarianism. The left and the right is left and right politically, and all 4 of my characters are kind of each of them fit within each of those 4 quadrants, and I think that kind of works rather well. So that's kind of what I'm doing with them, but there's many ways that you can slice that, right? Think about Star Wars again. I'm going to keep going back to Star Wars. It's just something I can pull off the top of my head, and a lot of people know about it. I don't know why I had to explain that. So just think about, the 3 main protagonists of A New Hope, right? You've got Leia, who really wants Darth Vader defeated. She's very single-minded about it, but maybe she's too independent in a way. Maybe she needs to learn how to work as a team more and be grateful for that team. That's kind of that's my read on her as a character. That's her weakness that she overcomes by the story's end, by A New Hope's end. What's Han Solo? He's a guy who's out for himself and has to learn to work as a team, to care about the mission, the sort of the vision that Leia has, but he's got to realize why that's worth it. And just like Leia has to learn to work at a team to realize that vision, he has to learn to like the vision and also, I guess, to work as a team. And Luke, I guess, is an unfocused hero that learns to embody the sort of moral vision that Leia has, just like Han does, but he's already okay with working as a team, if that sort of makes sense. But he lacks, I just kind of said that they both, there's different ways of slicing it, as you can tell, but they're all, his weaknesses lie elsewhere, I guess. It's not in whether or not he cares about the mission or wants to work as a team. But you can tell that creates tension between Leia and Han, Leia and Luke, Han and Luke. They're all in conflict because they're not all on the same page about, can we work together? Can we trust each other? Can we care for each other? Can we be selfless for each other? And can we care about the greater good, I guess. So that's kind of my thoughts. Hopefully that was interesting. And just think about your characters in terms of a web. And each of them have to be opposing one another in different ways. They have to have weaknesses that highlight each other's strengths. They have to have strengths that exacerbate each other's weaknesses in a way, because that's going to create conflict in every scene, and that's going to be the fuel. That's like the diesel fuel running through the veins of every scene, is that conflict. Your characters need it, your story needs it, in order to keep things interesting. And that's the mechanism by which you're going to bring out growth in each of the characters and keep people reading. So that's kind of my tip for today. That's how to keep your characters interesting. Thanks for checking out Driven Stories, and I'll talk to you again later. Thanks, bye.